Hey y'all, and welcome to PolitiBrawl News. My name is Brian, and Vice President J.D. Vance hits an absolute home run in his first interview as Vice President on Face the Nation, and Margaret did not know what was coming. Let's dive in.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops this week condemned some of the executive orders signed by President Trump, specifically those allowing immigration and customs enforcement to enter churches and to enter schools. Do you personally support the idea of conducting a raid or enforcement action in a church service, at a school?
Well, let me address this. Of course, if you have a person who is convicted of a violent crime, whether they're an illegal immigrant or a non-illegal immigrant, you have to go and get that person to protect the public safety. That's not unique to immigration. But let me just address this particular issue, Margaret, because as a practicing Catholic, I was actually heartbroken by that statement. And I think that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops needs to actually look in the mirror a little bit and recognize that when they receive over $100 million to help resettle illegal immigrants, are they worried about humanitarian concerns, or are they actually worried about their bottom line? We are going to enforce immigration law. We're going to protect the American people.
Yeah.
Donald Trump promised to do that. And I believe the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, if they're worried about the humanitarian costs of immigration enforcement, let them talk about the children who have been sex trafficked because of the wide open border of Joe Biden.
You personally
let them talk
support them
about
going into
people like
schools
Laken
and
Riley
churches.
who were brutally murdered. I support us doing law enforcement against violent criminals, whether they're illegal immigrants or anybody else, in a way that keeps us safe. Let me ask this question, Margaret. Let's separate the immigration issue. If you had a violent murderer in a school, of course I want law enforcement to go and get that person out.
Of course.
So what's the point of the question?
You changed the regulation this week. That's the point of the question.
Exactly.
Giving the authority to go into churches and go into schools.
We empowered law enforcement to enforce
But
the
that
law
also
everywhere
has
to protect
knock-on
Americans.
Effect, a chilling effect, arguably, to people to not send their kids to school.
I desperately hope it has a chilling
In the
effect on
churches,
illegal immigrants
you think
coming
the U.S.
into our
Conference
country.
of Catholic Bishops are actively hiding criminals from
I think the U.S.
law
Conference
enforcement?
of Catholic Bishops has frankly not been a good partner in common sense immigration enforcement that the American people voted for. And I hope, again, as a devout Catholic, that they'll do better.
There are 5 legal challenges already to one of the other immigration actions, the order on birthright citizenship. A federal judge appointed by Ronald Reagan, I think you'd agree, has some conservative credentials,
Sure.
paused the order to end birthright citizenship, calling it blatantly unconstitutional. How do you reconcile this challenge to the 14th Amendment to the Constitution?
So I obviously disagree with that judge, and these things, some of them will be litigated. That's the nature of our constitutional system. But here's the basic idea of President Trump's view on this. If you are a lawful permanent resident or a legal immigrant who plans to stay, your children, of course, should become American citizens. But let's say you're the child of an ambassador. You don't become...
But that's not part of it.
Well, that
There's
is
already a
that is
carve-out
that is
having
an
to deal
important
with kids of
principle.
diplomats.
But we're saying that carve-out should apply to anybody who doesn't plan to stay here. If you come here on vacation and you have a baby in an American hospital, that baby doesn't become an American citizen. If you're an illegal alien and you come here temporarily, hopefully, your child does not become an American citizen by virtue of just having been born on American soil. It's a very basic principle in American immigration law that if you want to become an American citizen and you've done it the right way, and the American people and their collective wisdom have welcomed you into our national community, then you become a citizen. But temporary residents, people who come in here, whether legally or illegally, and don't plan to stay, their children shouldn't become American citizens. I don't know any country that does that or why we would be different.
Well, this is a country founded by immigrants.
Well, this is a country founded by... This is a very unique country, and it was founded by some immigrants and some settlers, but just because we were founded by immigrants doesn't mean that 240 years later that we have to have the dumbest immigration policy in the world. No country says that temporary visitors, their children, will be given complete access to the benefits and blessings of American citizenship. America should actually look out for the interests of our citizens first, and that means, again, if you're here permanently and lawfully, your kid becomes an American citizen. If you're not here permanently, if you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and don't plan to be, why would we make those people's children American citizens permanently?
Y'all, give him a round of applause. This is unusually perfect. I don't see too many perfect clips from politicians because you can nitpick here and there. I'm one of those people that if I was a teacher, I'd almost never give out 100, which would make me one of the most hated teachers around, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, J.D. Vance started an argument about why are you wanting to end birthright citizenship? Even a Reagan judge said no. We need to halt this. Need to halt this executive order, and I actually agree with that judge from a legal standpoint. It should be initially halted because that is something that needs to be brought forth in the Constitution. This needs to be brought forth, into the Supreme Court. This needs a much larger argument, and thus is going to need a little bit more time to build its way through the court system. So granted, while I love the idea because I do think we need to rework the idea of birthright citizenship, if you were born here but your parents were illegal, I'm sorry. It's tough for me to trust that because if your parents are here illegally or you were used as an anchor baby, that's not putting American ideals first. That's putting your family and potentially your other nation first, so that way they can leech off the United States in a way. And I hate using the word leech, but that's just the first word that comes to mind. And so what J.D. Vance does here is he doesn't answer the question immediately. And he doesn't even address the issue that Little Miss Margaret was trying to bring up, and that was that, even a Reagan judge was against this. Well, yeah, a lot of judges have a lot of different reasons, and I think in this case, this is going to help build the argument for the future. And even I'm sort of stumbling through this, and that's why J.D. Vance is so good at what he does, because he takes the initial outrage of the question, an attempt at a gotcha, an attempt to divide Republicans that, we're big Reagan fans, and J.D. Vance is apparently not a fan of Reagan? What? That's the kind of journalism that I don't trust. Is an attempt to divide based on the attempt to get another headline that J.D. Vance disagrees with Ronald Reagan. And he doesn't fall for it, not for a second. And then at the very end, he brings the whole argument full circle as to why he's not a fan of the birthright citizenship as currently enacted by law. And as a matter of fact, the guy who initially wrote the idea quite literally said that no, this was for a specific point and purpose. This was a part of the 14th Amendment that was supposed to ensure that all former slaves in the United States were treated as citizens. That was the point and purpose. Now, for some people to randomly come over, have their baby, go back to their other nation, and then claim American citizenship status, no, that wasn't the point. Although, from my perspective, that means that you needed to write a more airtight law, and that's what we're arguing about right now. We need to write more airtight laws to protect American citizens. And then in another question, he was asked that, well, do you really agree with your fellow Catholics who aren't really happy with current laws? He even admits that as a Catholic himself, I'm very Protestant, so I don't have as much skin in this game. But Catholic churches have been under government surveillance and have been unethically kind of targeted over the last 4 years because there's a lot of Catholic schools, there's a lot of Catholic institutions, and a lot of them are very pro-life and weren't exactly all on board on wearing the masks and such. And so the FBI were told to, hey, why don't we take a look at these churches and infiltrate them to some degree. And so I can see that there's some overlap, but the difference between looking into someone because they're anti-abortion, looking into someone because they might be against current school system policies, and they might not be all in favor of these weird lockdowns, that's a whole lot difference between them and they might have illegal immigrant students in their schools. One has an actual crime, okay? One is an actual problem that is under law justifiable, and the other is just completely outside the boundaries of our current law system. And thus, I don't blame Catholic bishops for being a little bit antsy when it comes to governments trying to once again get inside their business. But in this case, there are laws on the books. There is precedent for this. And so J.D. Vance is simply saying, look, if there are violent criminals who are here illegally, we kind of need to protect our current citizens underneath our laws. So I can understand any sympathies that Catholic bishops might have and any awareness that they might want to have against government overreach, particularly under the last administration, but the whole point of America First is to protect American citizens. If these people are citizens, then there's not a real problem here. If they're not, there's got to be some sort of restoration. There's got to be some sort of justice here. Because if we don't have that, then we don't really have a country. And thus, Miss Margaret, who the reason I'm pointing her out as just Margaret is because J.D. Vance, I believe during a similar segment, basically said, "I don't really care, Margaret." And it became such a meme overnight. And so, yeah, when it comes to illegal immigrants, do you really care, Margaret? Do you? Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on PolitiBrawl News. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one.